Okay, here's a quick one. One of many ways by which you can load an MP4 back into Howler, right? So the problem is this: we have in Howler the ability to save your animation as a MP4, also as a couple of other formats. And some of these formats we can load back in. So if you had it as a image sequence, you can load that image sequence again. If you save it as a AVI, you can also very likely load that AVI back in. If you need to work with it, if you have video in a format like these, you can work with it. But if you saved it to the media, there is two choices there. One of them is MP4. There is no way right now to reload that MP4 directly back in. But you may have other tools, and so I used Quicktime Pro for Windows to extract it to an image sequence. But there's a couple of other tools, and here is one. It's called AnimeStudio. Now the new name is back to Moho. It used to be Moho, then it became AnimeStudio, and it's back to Moho. So which version you have, I don't know, but there is a version 11.2 that I have here. And at least the Pro version can be used. So let's explore that, and then we'll see how to get the animation back into this. So first we'll take a look at the animations that we want to load. There's a bunch of renderings. In fact, most of these I rendered in Dogwaffle, in Howler. But that's not the point. They are in MP4 format, and you may want some of that to come back into Howler for further processing, right? So let's see if you have one that's particularly amusing or interesting to look at. Yeah, maybe this tunnel vision. Let's play it just to see it. Okay, yeah. So let's say we want to take that back into Howler, or maybe something that's aspect ratio more compatible with the default I see, because I'm not that familiar with AnimeStudio. Let's take this one. Let's say we wanted to make this a little looping animation, or maybe a ping pong animation. We go in, we go back out, stuff like that, right? So we don't need to load the whole animation. In fact, that's when it really makes sense to have an image sequence, so you can be picky and select exactly which frames you want, even maybe every other frame. So here we go. I'm going to launch AnimeStudio. In fact, I have it. Okay, so that's the one, Media 01. I have a shortcut here. I'm going to launch it right there. Would you like to choose a location to custom? No, not now. And here we go. This is the Pro version. I suspect you can do the same thing with the debut, or what's the entry level AnimeStudio debut. What I'm going to do is simply close the current project. Close, there you go, and we'll create a new one. Create new, and hopefully it's the right aspect ratio. Otherwise you'll need to adjust it to whatever the aspect ratio is for your animation, and you may not even care, because you may only want a portion of your images. Your frames are this wide, you may only want a portion of that. It's okay. You can basically just try that. There's a layer. You can load into that layer an animation, right? So let's go do that right here. So I'm looking at this MP4 video that I have here somewhere, and I want to locate it. Which one was it again? Short-term memory, little challenge here. Let's see if I can preview it. There you go, that's the one. All right, so I'm just going to drop it right into this current layer. And there it is. And yeah, it's too big. It's bigger than the current settings of the project. So that's where you can shine and be a little bit more specific about what parts you actually want to see. You can resize it if you want to have everything. Look at that. It's the same aspect ratio, more or less. It's probably a full HD. Or 720p or something like that. There's some margin around here. Maybe you don't care to keep that, so you could make it a little bit bigger and crop some of it off. It's really up to you, right? Sometimes you have assets that you buy in MP4 and you want the whole thing, or sometimes you don't care, you only want a portion of it. What's nice with MP4, it handles RGB channels. Now it can also, in some cases, you may find some videos that are RGB plus alpha. We don't do that quite yet directly, but there are some formats like FFmpeg video could potentially also handle your transparency mask at the same time. We can handle that as two separate channels, two separate videos, if you will. Load one and store it, make that the animated selection, and you have your alpha mask. But let's say just the traditional RGB channels, how do you get this now into an animation? Because here it is, right? This is the animation through the eyes of AnimeStudio. We have this in a layer. It was as simple as just drag and drop into the current default layer. In fact, it added a new layer when we dropped it in there. Right? We don't even need the one there below. But this time really easy. You simply render that out. So you export the animation. Right? So there it is. Control E. And the choices are a couple. You could save it to a different format. AVI might work too if you like the AVI import we have, where you can actually select and preview the first and the last frame of what you're going to extract from it. That's a good choice too, as long as you have the right codecs available. Right? You may not have the proper codecs on your system, or you may have them, but maybe AnimeStudio doesn't see it. Like I have Xvid, I have one other that I prefer to use because it's lossless and yet still very compressed, but it's not showing it here. So you have some choices, maybe not the best with AVI, and really the preferred recommended way to do this is, well, maybe animated GIF, right? That's another thing. If you want to convert your animation to an animated GIF, well, you could do that directly in Howler. There is an export to AnimeGIF, but it's not super sophisticated. You may not be able to do color compression or reduction in colors or smoothing and other things, right? You may not be able to identify which color is transparent, yada yada. So with animated GIFs, there's a whole slew of other things you want to do at times. And I recommend perhaps checking this one out to see if that's better. But let's go back to the original idea. Image sequence right there. With the image sequence, of course, PNG, one of the favorites. The native format that we use is Targa. You could use that. Both of these will load really quickly when you import an image sequence. The advantage with PNG is that Windows understands PNG. So there is a preview thumbnail you will see in Windows Explorer, just like same with BMP or JPEG. Whereas Targa, it doesn't give you a preview. So it's a little bit of a different story if you want to work with it on the Windows. I would say let's try PNG first. And you'll probably be best served saving the whole animation, but you could essentially say, well, no, I know I only need from frame, let's say 30 to 60 or something like that. You can definitely do that here already to save some time and disk space. But also more importantly, perhaps look at the other options. And you have a couple of other things you can do here. Let's go and save it. And there you go. Okay, so I have a folder. I'm going to create a new folder here. Let's say sequence 1 PNG. It's always good to indicate in the folder name what format you think you're going to save in there. And in fact, you could have several formats in there. You could have the same sequence saved as Targa, BMP, JPEG, PNG, that sort of things. All right, so let's save it out. No need to give it a particular name. You could say frame underscore or whatnot, and it will do the rest. Here it's exporting multiple frames, parallel threads to go a little bit faster. And eventually you'll have the whole thing as an image sequence, and then you can go back to Howler and import the frames that really matter to you. You may not necessarily want the whole animation, maybe just a portion of it back into Howler to do the next level of work with that. And I'm going to pause the recording here and come back when it's done. And we're back, and so now the whole image sequence has been saved. And that's it. We don't need to save this project necessarily, so just close that, don't save it, and go back here. So now in Howler, we are not going to try to load the mp4. We can't do that in this version. Maybe someday we will, but now we have converted the whole thing. In fact, let's go check the mp4, probably this one here. Yep, there it is. Okay, so here's sequence 1's PNG that I saved to. And there it is, right? So as I indicated, we now have that mp4 as an image sequence, right? So you can see one frame at a time. And with any luck, it saved every frame you have in that animation. If you actually requested 240 of them, and you see the part number here, the final number showing the version number 240. The first one is probably 1. Yep, 0, 1. And so it's automatically doing that. And now you can, of course, decide which one you want to import. So how do you do that? Simply load the sequence from the animation menu and go to not your Dropbox, but your, where is it? On the desktop, Steam Tutorials. There. And import, there you go, PNG, there, right? Okay, so you can import, shift click to select how many you want to import. Let's import them all, right? So here you go, shift click the whole thing. If you want to do a test first, maybe keep it low and say load the selected. And so there you have that very short animation sequence loaded. And if that's actually longer, or if that's shorter than what you wanted, you can, oh wait, I got a little bit more than I thought to here. What's that? Oh, it looks like I got 203 frames. Didn't realize I had that many selected. Maybe, oh, because it was more than a full page of selected files. Anyway, so that's what you do. And if you want to load the whole animation at this time, you go back to load sequence. Perhaps free it up first. Actually, it's probably going to do that for you, but it doesn't hurt if you do that yourself first. Free the animation, and then you can close this. You still have a single image here. Now you go to load sequence, and yeah, there it is. See, I had a whole bunch of scrollable content to select for here. Right, so make sure you see, or at least click the first one and then shift click the last one. Make sure you don't scroll, you have no scrollable extras. By the way, if you have multiple images in there, PNG, TIFFs, JPEGs, you can be selective about which ones you're looking for. So JPEGs, I don't have any here, but PNG I do. So then that way, you know, you will only be selecting PNGs. You don't want to accidentally select duplicate frames, right? If you had saved it to PNG and also to JPEG and also to Targa, select only that one format and then go. And so it's allocated a memory. That's a quick one. Then it's loading every frame, also relatively fast. And there we go. So now we have imported that file that used to be an animation in mp4. It's now back in Howler. And, you know, there's many reasons why you might want to do that. I mean, this was a good animation, but at the end, maybe you need it in a smaller size or at a lower bit rate. Whatever the reason is, there's tons of, occasionally tons of reasons to revisit that, right? You might want to reverse it. You might want to time stretch it. Maybe make it faster by having only half the frames, with frame blending or without. So you completely drop the frames that you toss, and so now it's a little bit faster in the animation, etc., etc. All right, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.